Education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the minds to think. A quote from Albert Einstein. Welcome to AHS Guide, your trusted resources for mastering all the 5 subjects of first year RGUHS syllabus for the allied health science students. Here, we break down the complex concepts into clearer explanations with visual and exam-focused tips, helping you to learn smarter and score better. Whether you're preparing for the university exams or building a strong healthcare foundation, you are in the right place. Today, we begin our journey into another system or a regional system from anatomy, which is cardiovascular system, the body's lifeline network. This system ensures that every cell gets the oxygen and nutrients needed while removing waste products as well. We'll explore its structure from the heart and blood vessels to the microcirculations and understand how it maintains the blood flow, blood pressure, and overall hemostasis in the physiology. By the end of the series, you'll be able to understand the cardiovascular system is not just a pump and pipes, but a dynamic, self-regulating system vital to life. Heart. So the first topic is heart size, location, and the position of the heart, followed by the chambers and the rest of the topic, which will be dealt in this video. Here we'll see what is the size of the heart first. So size of the heart is said to be roughly the size of a closed clenched fist. So when you close your left fist, making it into a punch-shaped fist, then it is supposed to be a size of your heart. So the average male heart weight is approximately 280 to 340 grams, and for female it is approximately 230 to 80 grams. Now the length is approximately 12 centimeters from the base. So this side is base and this is the apex. The bottommost tip that is pointing downwards of the heart is the apex. So the length from the base to the apex is 12 centimeters. The width is approximately 8 to 9 centimeters and the thickness is approximately 6 centimeters from anterior to the posterior region. Now, where is the heart located? It is said to be located in the mediastinum, the central compartment of thoracic cavity. So mediastinum is the region between the two lungs. So this region is called as mediastinum, and the heart is placed in between in the central compartment of the mediastinum or the lower compartment of the mediastinum. Now where is the position? Exactly between the lungs and behind the sternum and above the diaphragm. So from anterior region you have the sternum which is covering the heart. From the posterior region you have the vertebra. On the lateral sides you have the lungs, and below or the inferior region is the diaphragm. So that is the position of the heart. Now the 2/3 of its mass lies on the left side of the midline. So you can see that if this is the midline that is passing in between the between the body, giving a by two sides of a body. Here the heart is said to be, its mass mostly is contributed on the left side of the midline, and the 1/3 is on the right side. Now, the apex of the heart are located on, it points downwards, forward and to the left. So apex is whatever the tips of the heart are. So it is one is pointing downwards, one is pointing downwards, forwards and to the left. So it is located at the position 5, fifth intercostal space. So this is the fifth intercostal space, and 1 is representing the apex. So here you can see usually in the fifth intercostal plane, the mid-clavicular line and mitral area is the region where the apex of the heart is located. Now the base, where can you see the base? It is opposite to the apex and faces posteriorly towards the vertebral column. So it's behind, the base of the heart is said to be behind and is opposite to the apex, and the faces are posteriorly towards the, it faces posteriorly to the vertebral column. The heart chambers are right and left. So the right chambers are called right atrium and right ventricle. Left chambers are called left atrium and left ventricle. So left atrium is involving red blood or the oxygenated blood. The right atrium or right ventricle contains the deoxygenated blood or oxygen poor blood. So this is the chambers of heart. Now I'll be dealing with each chamber of the heart individually. So the first chamber is right atrium. The key features of the right atrium are it is thin walled chamber of the heart. The blood, how is the blood supply, or how is the blood being received into the right atrium? Here the venous blood from the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava are being poured into the right atrium. So now where is the superior and inferior vena cava? I'll show you the image. So here the top right pink color portion that you see here is the right atrium. The above region, the above blue color vein that is going into the right atrium is the superior vena cava. The inferior one or the below vein that is passing through the right atrium is the inferior vena cava. Now there is the section of the heart, right atrium over here. We'll go through the section of the right atrium later. We'll read through the key points or the features of it. So right atrium or right auricle has a small projection from the atrium, and the position is superior medial, that is superior region and at the medial region of the human body. Superior medial refers to the region of the human body, and it is overlapping the roots of the aorta. So it is above the aorta. It appears to be overlapping on the aorta. Now the crista terminalis is the vertical muscular ridge that is inside the right atrium, and the location is between the openings of the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. Crista terminalis functions by separating the smooth posterior wall from the rough anterior wall. So there is a smooth posterior wall of the right atrium and there is a rough anterior wall for a right atrium. Now the walls and surfaces of right atrium, the posterior wall is smooth as we read here. So the smooth surface lies behind the caval openings, that is superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. Behind the superior and inferior vena cava is a posterior wall. This posterior wall is called sinus venerum, which is smooth wall, and it contains the fossa ovalis. We'll be learning about fossa ovalis in future. Just know the fossa ovalis is present here. It is a small depression in the right atrium. Fossa ovalis is a opening in an infant. So when the baby is inside the mother's womb, the blood circulation or the heart is not going to be pumping the blood or doing the work. So fossa ovalis is a bypass of these blood that takes place inside the fetal. So in spite of heart being pumped, the blood is going to bypass from right atrium to left atrium. Now the anterior wall is consisting of a thick and muscular wall, and it contains musculi pectinata, which has parallel muscular ridges, and these ridges run transversely to crista terminalis. Now the openings and valves that are present in the right atrium are superior vena caval orifice, where it is located superiorly, that is above, and there is no valve over there. For inferior vena cava, it is located inferiorly. It has a rudimentary valve which does not work exactly, but it is present in the inferior vena cava orifice, and that is called estuation valve. It is anteriorly placed. Now there is coronus sinus opening also. Coronus sinus opening is a opening for a cardiac circulating blood. So whatever blood that is being received by the cardiac muscles for oxygen and nutrients and waste products is being received by the coronary sinus opening, and here the small opening is located posteriorly, that is between superior vena cava and inferior vena cava openings. Now we'll understand each of the thing that we have read right now with the diagram. Now this is a right atrium. Now here the right atrium, as we can see in the image, inside it is a smooth wall, which is a posterior wall. On the right side they have cut open, it is like a flap that is opened out, so it has the parallel muscular ridges. So this is the okay, since we have seen the anterior and the posterior walls of right atrium, we'll be seeing the openings and the valves that are in the right atrium. So there is the opening from the superior region or the above region, which is the superior vena cava, and there is one more small opening from the below, which is inferior vena cava, which is below here, the blue color. And there is also one more opening, which is the coronary sinus. As I told, there is an inferior vena cava which has a rudimentary or not working valve, which is called estuation, which is present here only next to the inferior vena cava. So there is also a scar tissue here, the round tissue that you see over here, which is a fossa ovalis, which was said to be a opening between right and left atrium. It is now a scar tissue when the small child develops into an adult. There's one more, which is crista termina, which is the division or ridge, muscular ridge. You can see the crista division terminalis, which is shown in the arrow mark over here. There are three divisions of the line that is connecting to the crista terminalis. So in crista terminalis, the muscular ridge is flowing from the superior to the inferior vena cava and acts as a muscular propagation. So that is right atrium, and we'll be studying about the next chamber, which is right ventricle. So right ventricle, the key features of right ventricle are its naturistic walled chamber. It is positioned as the projections forward and to the left of the right atrium. Its separation from left ventricle by interventricular septum, and which bulges into the right cavity. The internal features are the wall structure is marked by a interlacing muscular bands called trabecular carne, and the exception is the superiorly a smooth walled infundibulum, which leads to pulmonary orifice. So the openings, we'll see the openings later. So first we'll see the anatomical features of the right ventricle. So right ventricle has a thick muscular wall, not as much as left ventricle. We'll come to left ventricle later. So the muscular wall near the pulmonary trunk or the pulmonary orifice, there is a superior smooth muscle wall, and the rest of them are covered in muscular ridges called the trabecular carne. So you can see all the muscular ridges. It is not smooth. There are muscle fibers which are bundled and are rough. So these are called trabecular carne. And there is what else? Yeah, there is a separation between left ventricle and the left ventricle and the right ventricle by a interventricular septum. So it separates the two ventricles, and there is a muscular separation which is called as interventricular septum. You can see the muscular part that is dividing exactly in between these two. The fatty tissue that passes over here, that below that is the interventricular septum. So we have covered the anatomical features of it. Now we'll see the different openings of the various valves and the orifices. So there is atrioventricular opening. So there is a opening between the right atrium and the right ventricle, which is called atrioventricular orifice. It's located posterior inferiorly, and it is guarded by three cusped valves or tricuspid valves. So these cusps are rough on ventricular surface and anchored to the walls by chordae tendineae. The chordae tendineae, so yeah, first we'll see the image of how it is. So this white color thing that you see, that is the atrioventricular septum. and it is rough from the ventricular side. So when you see from the ventricular side, it is rough on the outside. These have three cusps around them, and hence it is called tricuspid valve. And this tricuspid valve has an anterior cusp, a septal cusp and posterior cusp. So these three together make the tricuspid. These tricusps are being attached to the muscle wall with the caudate tendinae. So you can see this network like spider web kind of a thing, which is called caudate tendinae. And the extension or the protrusion from the muscle to the caudate tendinae is called papillary muscle. Now we'll see the functions of how is the caudate tendinae arising from. So the caudate tendinae arises from the interventricular septum or from the two conical papillary muscles that is arising from the anterior and the inferior walls of the ventricle. Now, so the function of the atrioventricular orifice is to prevent the valve cusp eversion or preventing the regurgitation of the blood from right atrium during the contraction. So what is the work of this valve? It is going to allow the flow of blood from right atrium into right ventricle and stops the flow of blood from right ventricle or the black flow of the blood from right ventricle to right atrium. So it is stopping the regurgitation that is going to happen inside the heart. So that is the work of a tricuspid valve or a atrioventricular orifice valves. The pulmonary orifice that you see is at the upper end of the infundibulum and is guarded by a pulmonary valve. The structure of the pulmonary valve is having three semilunar cusps and the shape is concave when viewed from the above. You see the pulmonary orifice. So this is the pulmonary orifice. You can see there is three semilunar cusps that are formed, which together form the pulmonary valve, and it is acting as the opening to the pulmonary trunk. So these pulmonary trunk pump out the deoxygenated blood from the body, from the right atrium to the right ventricle and into the pulmonary trunk and then back to the lungs. So that is why the pulmonary trunk is that is the function of pulmonary trunk, and the pulmonary valve prevents the backflow of the blood from the trunk into the right atrium, right ventricle once it is being pumped out. So that is the function of the pulmonary valves. Moving to the third chamber, which is left atrium, which is on the left side of the heart, and the key features of the left atrium are the shape is rectangular in chamber and the position lies behind the right atrium. So the next chamber that we will be studying about is left atrium. The key features of left atrium are it appears to be rectangular in shape or rectangular chamber. The position of the left atrium is it lies behind the right atrium, and here the left atrium is projected in behind the or is overlapped on the pulmonary trunk, and the openings into the left atrium are there are four openings, two from the lungs, each lung, and enters the posterior surface. There are no valves at these orifices. So the pulmonary veins that come from the lungs to the heart carrying the oxygenated blood is being carried from the right pulmonary veins and left pulmonary veins. So here in the image you can see, but from both the sides of the lungs, the pulmonary veins bringing the oxygenated blood and push into the right atrium, left atrium. Now the atrioventricular orifice is also seen, which is located on the anterior atrial wall. It leads from left atrium into the left ventricle and is guarded by the mitral valve or the bicuspid valve. It is not mentioned in the exams, but it is very important for the whatever you write. So the right ventricle orifice is the valve or the opening between the left atrium and the left ventricle. Here it acts as a guard valve or and is named as mitral valve or bicuspid valve. It prevents the backflow of blood from the ventricle to the atrium. The relationship of the left atrium with the walls of the heart are: the posterior wall lies anterior to the esophagus and left bronchus descending thoracic aorta. So the posterior wall of the left atrium is touching on the esophagus, the left bronchus of the lungs, and the descending thoracic aorta, which is a part of a aorta. Now moving to the third type, which is left ventricle. Here the key features are the position. It extends from the forward and to the left of the left atrium and lies mainly behind the right ventricle. So the wall is very thick, and compared to all other chambers, it has the thickest chamber walls, and the internal surface is covered by muscular ridges, which is the trabecal carne, and the except at vestibular region, rest all is covered with muscular ridges of the trabecular carne, and the smooth area is below the aortic orifice. As in case of right ventricle also, we saw that there is a smooth surface near the pulmonary orifice. Here also the aortic orifice has a smooth area. Now the openings here in left ventricle consist of the atrioventricular valve and the aortic orifice. Now the left atrioventricular valve is on the posterior region and is guarded by two cusps, as we saw in the left atrium. So these bicuspid valves prevent the backflow of blood from the left ventricle into the left atrium. Now these cusps again are attached to the papillary muscles by chordae tendineae in a similar way as we saw in the right ventricle. Here the aortic orifice is superior and is guarded by the aortic valves with three semilunar cusps. The above cusps have small dilatations called the aortic sinuses. Let's first see the left ventricle. So here the left ventricle, you can see the thickness of the muscle. Compared to all other chambers, the muscle thickness of the left ventricle is very thick because it has to pump the oxygenated blood that is received from lungs into the left atrium, then into the left ventricle to the whole body. So to pump in the blood to the whole body, the muscle has to be thick and the pump has to be very quick and with a very strong force, and hence the left ventricle has the thickest muscles. So here the muscles have the very rough and they have trabecal carne. The ridges you can see inside, there are ridges of the muscles, and there is a small opening between the left ventricle and the left atrium, which is called atrioventricular valve, and this valve is guarded by the bicusps. So the bicusps can also be called as mitral valve. It prevents the blood backflow from left ventricle into the left atrium. So there is posterior cusp and anterior cusp. So these are again the chordae tendineae are attached to these cusps. The chordae tendineae are in turn attached to the muscle wall by a papillary muscle. And the another opening that is seen, or the orifice that is seen in left ventricle, is this aortic opening. So the aortic opening opens into the aortic arch, aortic artery, aortic vein, wherein the heart pumps the blood to the aorta and then into the body parts. So this aorta is guarded by the semilunar valves, which have three cusps in them. So that covers the different chambers of the heart. Now we'll see the overview of all the chambers that we have learned till now. So we saw the right atrium, which is on the right above here, superiorly placed, and it is overlapped by the pulmonary. It overlaps the pulmonary aortic trunk and has the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava opening into the superior and inferior region. There is coronary sinus also that is opening into the right atrium. All the deoxygenated blood from the head and from the toe is collected by the superior and inferior vena cava respectively, and the cardiac sinuses, which are the cardiac muscle veins that are attached, are opening or pushing the blood into the right atrium. The blood that is collected from the right atrium is pushed into the right ventricle by the valve which is called atrioventricular valve, and this atrioventricular valve has tricuspid valves. These tricuspid valves are connected with the caudate tendineae, and the caudate tendineae is in turn connected into the trabecular carne. This trabecular carne has the papillary muscles attached to the caudate tendineae. Now, the rough ridges that you see inside the heart is because of the trabecular carne. We forgot about the fossa ovalis. So, fossa ovalis is the temporary scar that is formed after the child is born. So here the fossa ovalis before the child is born and is inside the womb of the mother, the blood gets mixed up with the left and right ventricle. So fossa ovalis was the opening back inside the infants or the babies that were not yet born. But later, after the baby is born, the fossa ovalis was skewed and a valve was closed and the scar remained inside the heart. So that is the fossa ovalis. Here you can see the right ventricle, wherein the right ventricle has a posterior and anterior walls which are smooth and rough. The muscular ridges that you see are trabecular carne, and the blood that is being pushed from right atrium into the right ventricle is again pumped into the lungs through the pulmonary orifice. The pulmonary orifice is guarded by a semilunar valve. 3 semilunar valves are present in it. So the blood is pumped out from the right atrium into the pulmonary trunk, which carries the blood into the lungs. Now, moving to the next chamber, which is left atrium. The left atrium has four openings, left atrium has the four openings. It is thin walled, and here the four openings are carrying the blood from the pulmonary, the lungs by in the form of right and left veins. So these blood that is carried from lungs to the heart are oxygenated blood. The oxygenated blood is collected into the left atrium, and the blood from the left atrium is pushed from the left atrium into the left ventricle by the bicuspid valves. So when the bicuspid valves open, the blood from the left atrium moves into the left ventricle, and left ventricle, the muscle, you can see here, there is a very thick muscle that is present in the left ventricle alone. It has the thickest cardiac muscles present, and these bicuspid valves are attached to caudate tendineae and papillary muscles via the finally into the trabecular carne. So these trabecular carne are rough and mostly highly thick in these left ventricles. So left ventricle is again opening into the aorta. So here you can see the aorta. The aorta has the 3 semilunar valves. The oxygenated blood which is received from lungs is pumped out from the left ventricle into the aorta and then to the body. So you can see a thick muscle separation between the right and the left ventricle, that is called interventricular septum. So these are the different main structures of the heart. Remember the structures, and it is useful for you guys to write the exam. Topic which is exterior anatomy of heart. Here the whatever structures that are present on the heart or close to the heart and moving the blood vessels that are on the heart the various structures that are present or the sulcus that is present in the exterior anatomy of the heart will be seen. Firstly, the coronary sulcus is the atrioventricular groove which separates atria and the ventricles. So there are two atrium and two ventricles. So these two are separated externally by a coronary sulcus. It is a groove like a kind depression kind of a thing that you can see in the heart. So which is a coronary sulcus. Then we have anterior and posterior interventricular sulci which separates the right and the left ventricle. So from the anterior region and the posterior region you can see the interventricular sulci which is separating the right and the left ventricles alone. The coronary sulcus separates the atria and the ventricles, whereas the interventricular sulci separates the right and the left ventricles. Now the auricles are ear-shaped flaps of atria, and the major vessels that are from the heart are the superior and the inferior vena cava. There are pulmonary trunks and pulmonary veins and aorta as well. So these are the major vessels that you see around the heart. The apex is at the tip of the left ventricle and the base is the posterior part that is mostly formed by the left atrium. So let us see with an image. Here you can see the anterior region of the heart. We have seen these that you see, that is the separation. This fatty tissue or the yellow color region that you see is the atrioventricular septum that is separating the atria and the ventricle. So that is why it is called atrioventricular sulcus and or the coronary sulcus. We have a separation between two ventricles also. The mid yellow region that is forming the groove or the sulci is called interventricular sulci, or the anterior and posterior. So it's from anterior also you can see, from the posterior also there is separation between the two ventricles which is called anterior and posterior interventricular sulci. So those are the different sulcus or the grooves that you see. The next thing that we see are the major arteries and veins that are emerging from the heart. So there is superior vena cava, the blue color, the first one, and the down which is inferior vena cava. We have pulmonary trunk that is passing at the mid region, and we have aorta also. So these are the major structures that are major openings or the emerging veins and arteries that are present near the heart. We also have the right and left atrium which look like ear flaps for the heart. So these are the auricles. Here is the posterior view of the heart. This is the inferior vena cava. The thing that you see here is the inferior vena cava. The blue circle kind of a thing is the inferior vena cava. This is the coronary sinus that is opening into the right atrium. The blue color thing that is winding around the heart and opening into the right atrium is the coronary sulcus. Now this is the two veins that bring oxygenated blood from the lungs and into the left atrium. So right pulmonary veins and left pulmonary veins. What did we miss out? So yeah, the apex is at the tip of the left ventricle and this is the base that you see. This region is the base of the heart. Now the interior anatomy of heart, if you see, take a cut section of the heart, the interior anatomy looks like this. So on the right side you see the tricuspid valve and the pulmonary valve, trabecle carne and chordae tendineae. So here you have the tricuspid valve, the pulmonary valve, the above one pulmonary valve, and you have trabecle carne and the chordae tendineae on the right side of the coronary, right side of the heart, and on the left side you have the mitral valve and the aortic valve in the middle. So these tricuspid valve lies between the right atrium and the right ventricle. The pulmonary valve is between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery. The trabecal carneae are the irregular muscular ridges in the ventricle, and the chordae tendineae is the tendinous cords that is attaching between the valves and the papillary muscles. Now, the left side we have seen the mitral valve, which stays between the left atrium and the left ventricle. The aortic valve is between the left ventricle and the aorta, and the thicker myocardium is present in the left ventricle. So these are the important points that we have to remember under interior anatomy of the heart. So the heart valve anatomy, there are four valves that is present in the heart. One is there are two types basically, which are atrioventricular and the semilunar valves. The atrioventricular valve, there are two types, which is tricuspid and bicuspid. And the semilunar valves are present between the pulmonary trunk and the right ventricle, left ventricle and the aorta as well. So from the view above, you can see the pulmonary valves, aortic valves, tricuspid valves when they are open and closed. The pericardium of heart is the double-walled sac that encloses the heart. So the heart has a protective covering which is called pericardium, or the outside covering which is called, which also has pericardial fluid inside it. So here is the breakdown of how pericardium is. The double-walled sac is made up of the fibrous pericardium on the outer side and a serous pericardium on the inner side. So the outer layer fibrous pericardium is tough and is inelastic connective tissue. It protects, anchors and prevents the overdistension. So what does that mean? The fibrous pericardium is acting as the outermost layer of the heart, and it is very tough and inelastic. So it does not allow to be stretched out like a rubber band. So it is inelastic, meaning it is not going to be going to allow heart to expand more. Then it also protects and anchors as well as prevents the overdistension. So it protects the heart, anchors, that is, it keeps the heart in place, and prevents overdistension, that meaning overextension or over swelling of the heart by the accumulation of the blood in the chambers. Now the serous pericardium is the inner layer. It consists of the parietal layer and the visceral layer. So this parietal layer are made up of the lining that is close to the fibrous pericardium, and the visceral layer is the epicardium, which covers the heart surface. So the pericardium, epicardium and endocardium are the three layers that you see. So the pericardium is the outermost layer, epicardium is the middle layer, and the endocardium is the layer of the heart. Now here, between this pericardial cavity and the pericardial heart is a fluid. Between the heart surface and the pericardial cardium is the pericardial fluid, which is approximately 15 to 50 ml, and it reduces the friction while the heart is beating. It is essential to reduce the friction that is caused while the heart is pumping the blood. So that is the role of the serous. So now let us see the heart wall layers. So we saw the outermost covering, which is called pericardium. Now we will see the heart wall layers, which is epicardium, myocardium and endocardium. Now the epicardium is the visceral pericardium, or the outermost in the innermost pericardium. So visceral meaning the organ, and the pericardium is the covering. So epicardium acts as the outermost protective layer. Myocardium is the middle muscular layer, which is thickest and is responsible for the contraction and relaxation of the muscle. Not relaxation, only the contraction part is important, as because muscles in heart cannot relax. If they relax, they will stop pumping blood to the body. So myocardium is the middle and the thickest muscle layer. Now the innermost layer is called endocardium. It is the inner lining of the heart chambers and the valves. So we'll see the image here. The outermost blue color layer is the EPC is the epicardium. It is a visceral pericardium and it consists of the various types of tissues like dense fibrous tissue, areolar tissue, epithelium tissue, or the parietal pericardium that you see. Between the parietal pericardium and the epicardium is the pericardial fluid. The epicardium consists of two layers, which is epithelium and areolar tissue. Moving to the next one, which is myocardium tissue, is mostly made up of cardiac muscle tissue. So we have seen that cardiac muscle tissues are the branched type of muscle tissues, and they have striations in them, and they do not relax and are under continuous work. So these myocardium might contain connective tissue in between them also. There is endocardium, which is the innermost layer of the heart. It is covering the heart chambers as well as the valves of the heart. This endocardium consists of the areolar tissue and the endothelium. So that is the heart wall layers. Moving to the blood supply of heart, which will be covered in the next video. So till then, keep watching AHS Guide. Thank you.